Parks Committee is hereby called to order. I am here, Vice Chairman Steve Rhodes. Sitting in for Donald McKenzie is Rosemary Walker, Mr. Gaylor, Ranking Member Ellen Birnbaum, Laura Kern, and Arnold Drucker. We have a quorum. We have one item on the addendum, so I would move for a suspension of the rules. Mr. Rhodes moves. Ms. Curran seconds. We have before all in favor of suspending the rules. Aye. The rules are suspended. We have one item on the addendum, 479 of 17, which is a resolution authorizing the county executive to execute an administrative consent agreement and cooperation agreement with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation in relation to the Bay Park diversion project and additional work. Moved by Ms. Walker, seconded by, I will second that item. The item is now before us. Can we have someone from the administration, since it came down to us very late, come and explain this item to us? Name and address for the record, Bo. Name and...
Jane Hodak, counsel to the Nassau County Department of Public Works.
Okay. Do we have... Why don't you give us a general overview of what this is?
Sure. The western bays of Nassau County have failed to meet New York State water quality standards. The major causal factor of the failure is excessive nitrogen in the water bodies. The major discharger of nitrogen to these water bodies is the Bay Park sewage treatment plant. So accordingly, under New York State law as well as federal law, the county is obligated to reduce the amount of nitrogen that comes out of the Bay Park plant. We've been studying this issue and working with the state for a long time to address this. And through this agreement, the state has agreed to work with us to hasten the water quality improvements. Through their design build authority, they will take on the construction and the management of construction of the diversion from the Bay Park plant to the Cedar Creek plant through the existing conduit under Sunrise Highway. And so this will mean that we reap the water quality benefits much more quickly than we would have were we to do the construction. These contracts will all still go to public bidding. There will still be the normal processes by which you seek to have a competitive process and receive the lowest responsible bid. But the state has certain abilities under state law that will make the project work more quickly. In addition to the nitrogen aspect of the agreement, it also covers the ongoing work at Bay Park in response to the damage caused by Superstorm Sandy. And there's also a component in which we are to work with Long Beach to develop an agreement by which they will divert their sewage to the Bay Park plant. They have already signed an agreement with the state to do so, and we will work with them to develop that agreement by which we're able to then take on that sewage as well.
Mr. Rhodes, I understand you have some questions on this?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One point first. I know, and the devil is somewhat in the details on this. The effluent from the Bay Park sewer treatment plant is not being diverted to the Cedar Creek plant. Is being diverted to the Cedar Creek outfall pipe, correct?
That's correct.
So none of the treated effluent will actually be processed. First off, all the effluent is going to be treated. Correct.
The effluent at Bay Park will be treated, and there will be nitrogen removed at the Bay Park facility. There's an existing component within the agreement that the engineers can describe a lot better than I regarding the treatment at the plant. What this will do will then take that treated effluent and, as you correctly pointed out, connect it up to the outfall that discharges to the ocean from the Cedar Creek plant.
So none of the effluent will actually reach the Cedar Creek plant itself?
Correct.
It will simply be diverted to the outfall pipe. And the reason that I make that point is that there's a tremendous amount of misinformation out there. and which leads to my next point. I have had several conversations with the administration about when the appropriate time is for us to have public meetings with respect to what we anticipate the plan is going to be. I think it's absolutely essential that there be community meetings and public meetings, particularly in my district, since we're going to be the ones accepting, theoretically, through our neighborhoods, all of the treated effluent now for virtually the entirety of Nassau County through our district. I have been told that the appropriate time for those meetings would be upon completion of the design phase, when we're able to lay out for the community where exactly these pipes would go, where the connection points would be in order to connect with the aqueduct, the conduit underneath Sunrise Highway, what would specifically be involved in the project. The assurance that I've also been given is that before a final step is taken and before we commit ourselves to the project, that we would have those community meetings and get that community input. The proposal that's before us today seems an awful lot like it's a commitment. Can you explain for us what additional authority does the legislature have prior to finalization of this project to be able to get the community's input in a time where we can still reverse course if we need to? And again, understand I'm supportive of the project, but I want to make sure before we take the final step that there's community input.
I think
if we approve this today, do we still have that ability?
the state has made a commitment through its design process to keep the communities abreast. I mean, the state has done many community outreaches through other Superstorm Sandy recovery processes that it has undertaken, and I think it views this in the same line, that it's going to be reaching out to the community and having those public forums at which people will be apprised of the plan and what will go forward.
Well, there's a difference between advising the community of the plan and giving the community input prior to the plan being finalized. And that's what I'm concerned about.
This is just, the design build process that's contemplated by this agreement is somewhat different than the process that we would normally have before us, where the legislators would review the contracts. So it's not, we're not going to have that same contractual oversight that we would. But we do have the commitment from the state that they will work with the communities that are going to be benefiting from the water quality improvements, as well as hosting the pass-through of the sewage to the ultimate ocean outfall.
So what I'm hearing is that once we approve this, if in fact it is approved.
I'm sorry.
No, I understand. Am I correct in my understanding then that if in fact this is approved, the county does not have the ability to stop the process at that point?
The county has a number of reports that it has to deliver through the course of compliance with this agreement, and in delivering those reports and in hiring the people to do those reports will be, of course, made available to the legislature so that there can be input from the legislature on those reports. There would be nothing that would prevent the legislature from requesting and holding hearings on the information that the state is developing throughout its construction process?
I guess my concern is once the state takes over this process, which by this agreement they will be taking over the process, if the county has objections, we can't stop it. The state can do what they want to do at that point.
I don't know. I don't exactly understand what you mean by stop it. I mean, we're here now because we have an obligation to control nitrogen. We would, if absent this cooperative agreement with the state, we would be in some sort of enforcement agreement with them to undertake it. We would have to sign on to this enforcement agreement and agree that we were going to control it. The input that you would have would be, after that process, would be more in the contracting phase and people that you were choosing to do the work. But here, one of the things that has to happen as part of this whole process is a demonstration of the water quality benefit to the Western Bays from what would happen through modeling if you diverted it to the effluent to the connection to the Cedar Creek outfall. So that's something that is, again, as I said before, the public reporting of this information. What we're doing, the state is taking on this design build obligation, and in doing so has pledged that they will agree to have public outreach and public information. As you'll see, there's a cooperative agreement here, and that cooperative agreement refers to entering into a more formal agreement with the state. I'm sure that the state would be willing to put into writing its commitment to hold those public outreach sessions, public hearing sessions, however you'd like to denominate them. But I don't see why they wouldn't, since they've already pledged to do so.
I appreciate the answer, and I think I have the answer to my question. I'm just not necessarily pleased with it. Again, my concern is that the community outreach and the community hearings and the input you solicit from the community be done before there's a commitment to the completion of the project on the part of the county.
Right now, that we have a commitment to control nitrogen. As to the project itself, again, that we're going to be having a more formal agreement with the state that outlines the mechanics of this design build work by the state and the cooperation between the state and the county. And we can in that agreement, craft some sort of obligation for public sessions.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Gaylor.
Okay, so good afternoon, and thank you. Thank you for being here. So without the benefit of having the public's input into any of this, what would happen if we don't approve this today, if this is not approved?
Then we would probably go back to a simple enforcement agreement.
Okay. And this cooperative agreement, does this resolution that's before us today address all water quality violations and discharge permit violations that may exist at Bay Park?
What this does, it resolves any outstanding permit violations, and as one in appendix, which appendix? One of the appendices you'll see listed all of the Bay Park improvements that are being done physically at that plant caused by the damage from the hurricane, and as well as a separate appendices that talks about all of the improvements that are being done at the plant itself to address nitrogen.
Right. So there, in fact, could be more violations than you're saying that exist that are not covered by this agreement.
No. There's no other violations that exist right now that aren't covered by this agreement.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at, to make sure this resolves all violations that may exist. All right. As part of the funding, I know the state is committed to provide up to $78 million, but they termed it as using their best efforts to obtain that money. Assuming they don't, where does that money come from?
I can turn it over to the budget people to talk a little bit more about the actual mechanics of money, but I'll just tell you that when we are in violation, when there's a water quality violation, and we're the causal element of that water quality violation, we have to fix it, and the law doesn't take into account how much that costs us.
Okay, so then maybe the budget guy can tell us what's currently set aside for this, and what's the contingency plan if we have to come up with another $78 million. Because, I appreciate the state indicating they're going to use their best effort to come up with $78 million, but the reality is they may not, and therefore the county has to, and I'd like to know where the county plans on coming up with $78 million.
There is some money in the Andy Persick, Office of Management and Budget. There is some money to fund part of this project in the capital budget. We did some capital budget amendments, I think, at the last session to fund a portion of this. So I think the total project cost is about $350 million. I don't know what the split is between the state and the county, but there is a project in the capital budget that we amended a few weeks ago to fund this. So.
Okay, but that's not the question before you. The question is that the county's already committed to $48 million. The state said they're going to use their best efforts to try to find $79 million. I'm not so confident the state's going to come up with $79 million for Nassau County. So therefore, where do we come up with $79 million?
Well, it's a capital budget item, and we'd have to bond for it in order to fund it. So that's what would probably be the funding source for the outstanding balance if the state doesn't come through with the funds. So,
Do we know when the state will identify to us whether they have the funds or not?
I don't know the answer to that one. It's part of their budgetary process too, and I don't know what the DEC is going to do. So.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Any other questions? Mr. Drucker.
Yep, sorry. If we didn't have the cooperative agreement, we were relegated to the enforcement obligation that you speak about. Could you just explain what the parameters of that enforcement agreement would be, and what our obligations would be under it?
Good afternoon. Basically, our obligations under the enforcement agreement would be to build whatever control is necessary at the facility, or to utilize the diversion option to connect to the Cedar Creek outfall to accomplish the same result, which is the removal of the violating effluent from the water body. So basically what we would, if we went to the enforcement agreement as opposed to the cooperative agreement, what we would be giving up is the state's cooperative work on this project. You'd be giving up all of their willingness to do the design and the construction and all the benefits that flow with that, whether they be monetary or just simply in terms of their expertise and their ability to manage a project like this.
But they would definitely withdraw their financial support for the project.
They wouldn't withdraw the financial support for the projects that are ongoing in terms of the FEMA projects, in terms of the Sandy rebuilding. I don't know what that would do to their support of the nitrogen work.
Thank you.
Okay. I think I saw.
Ms. Curran? Oh. Ms. Walker?
Could you just repeat what you had said about Long Beach, how Long Beach ties into this?
Sure. The Long Beach plant has to control and manage its sewage, as do we, according to its permit. It had some outstanding permit violations. It, too, needs to address nitrogen. And the state and Long Beach, recognizing the incredible amount of money that was going to cost at such a small facility, approached it this way, with a requirement that Long Beach construct a diversion to the Bay Park facility and then construct and fund it and do it. Well, this will not. This is not money that's going to be paid for by the county. It's a Long Beach obligation.
Okay, so Long Beach will connect to Bay Park, and then and that's Long Beach.
I don't know whether or not under the agreement it connects directly to Bay Park, or it connects to at a point beyond the actual treatment of sewage at Bay Park to the diversion pipe to. Oh, you want to correct it? I'm going to let the engineer talk about that.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Joe Davenport, Chief Sanitary Engineer, Department of Public Works. The Long Beach diversion, they would convert their plant to a pumping station. They would construct a force main, tie into the collection system that serves the Bay Park plant, the pipes, and that wastewater would then be treated at the Bay Park plant. And then with this diversion project, utilizing the Cedar Creek outfall, discharged out into the Atlantic Ocean. What's good about if we can accomplish that Long Beach component of the project is if you look back over a number of years, the county has shut down and converted its Inwood sewage treatment plant into a pump station back in 2000. We've done the same with the villages of Cedarhurst and Lawrence's small, inefficient plants. And now with Long Beach, and then if we divert the Bay Park effluent to the Cedar Creek outfall, we'll have eliminated all of those wastewater discharges in the western bays there. It certainly would be a great accomplishment.
Thank you.
If I might, just a couple of questions. Am I wrong? Didn't the governor a couple of weeks ago have a press conference with respect to this issue?
Yes.
Okay. And at that point, didn't he indicate that the state was committing certain funding for this effort?
That's what he said. I was not there at the press conference, so I apologize. I don't have. I can't speak directly to what the governor said at that press conference, but he has indicated on numerous occasions the support that the state has for this project, that they recognize the regional importance of addressing nitrogen. And as Joe Davenport eloquently pointed out, you eliminate all of these smaller, inefficient plants and their discharges into this water body that's relatively shallow, that feels the effects of nitrogen acutely. And so by doing this, and I think that is the impetus behind their design-build approach to this, that they perceive the regional importance of addressing water quality and have, on numerous occasions, pledged to support this project, both with their efforts and financially.
And assuming we did not vote in favor of this, we would still be under the obligation to address the problems that we have here, correct?
Absolutely, without a doubt. I've been doing sewage treatment plant consent orders since 1988, and I can tell you that I have absolutely no doubt that the state would force us to do this on our own, with our own money, wherever it took.
Right, without the money of the state.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm sorry, Ms. Curran.
That's quite all right. Thank you very much. To your point, Legislator Muscarella, I was at the press conference, and it was a very public and very enthusiastic commitment. So for whatever that's worth, it's up to you to decide. Quick question. Who does the design-build procurement?
The state does that.
The state does that. Okay. And then to Legislator Rhodes' point about misinformation, I know in my community as well, there is misinformation out there that people are freaking out that raw sewage is going to be coming from other places. So I do think it would be helpful to have community input, whether they're input meetings or information meetings. And we can... Wouldn't the Department of Public Works be able to organize these meetings on its own without the state? I mean, obviously in coordination with the state, but we don't necessarily need their permission to do this. And while this is being designed, there are questions that we will not be able to answer. But I have to imagine there are a lot of questions that we will be able to answer and perhaps stop misinformation from spreading so that it doesn't make the project a heavier lift than it already is.
You're correct. Misinformation is always a detriment to any project, and so we would, of course, the state would, although they'd be designing and building it, we would be there working with our engineers and our consultants along the processes, and we can certainly have informational meetings at which the public is given all the opportunities they want to ask questions and to receive additional information.
That's good. I think that's very, very important for an ambitious project like this that has such great benefits. And, we're in a position to say we're doing great things for the environment, for the water, for the economy. And, this is something that we should be selling. And this I think, would be a good way for us to do that through real community engagement.
Ms. Birnbaum.
I'm concerned about the funding for this project, and I know the state has committed to grants, and the county will have to put in its share. But what about the city of Long Beach? Because you did say that the Long Beach's effluent will now be going to Cedar Creek as well.
Well, they're responsible for any construction work relative to converting their facility to a pump station, for paying for it to be connected to the Bay Park plant, and then they would be any work that they have to do to comply with that obligation that they have with the state to do that.
But does the county receive any benefit from having the city of Long Beach join with us?
Then they would pay into the county rate system for sewage service the way I do.
Okay, but so do we have an idea of how much that would amount to? Adding Long Beach to county plan?
We don't, but I mean, again, I think that having the Long Beach connection to this facility, which addresses a very urgent need in that area, only makes it more amenable to the state to fund. Because in my experience in the past with these sewage treatment plants, the state has money, and the state allocates that money where they perceive to be the greatest benefit and the greatest need. So when you're having something that addresses both the sewage treatment plant of Long Beach and rectifying the deficiencies at the sewage treatment plant in Long Beach, as well as rectifying the deficiencies at the sewage treatment plant in Bay Park, you become much more eligible for the funding pots that the state has available for these water quality benefit projects.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Obviously, I think we all, and I appreciate the county executive-elect's comments. I think it's absolutely essential that we have public input and public information, and we do that as quickly as possible. Obviously, this is a proposal that was brought to us sort of at the 11th hour, which we haven't even had really the opportunity to be able to review as of yet. My intention is to approve this today and pass it through to the full legislature. However, in the intervening weeks before our meeting on the 18th, there are several questions that I really need to have answered, and I would also like to have in place, with the cooperation, obviously, of the incoming administration, a timetable as to when we're going to have those public information meetings, because I think getting that information out there sooner rather than later is vitally important.
Certainly, those are things that we can accomplish between now and the 18th.
Thank you.
Ms. Walker.
I'm sorry, and I feel like bad that I keep going back to this, but I just want to make sure now Long Beach will be paying for the conversion as well as paying for the piping that goes to wherever they're connecting to?
To Bay Park.
To Bay Park, okay. And does Long Beach determine the route, or that
I don't know that they've progressed
to that
at that point.
It would be a joint project between us and the City of Long Beach. They would be responsible for all of the capital costs for the project. Certainly, if they propose a route and they're installing the force main or the pipe along a county roadway, there are requirements in place, road opening permits, that they would have to come to us for our approval. So it's not as if they would be able to do work in a county roadway without our okay on that.
Okay.
And just quickly to wrap up, and regardless of the hearings that we might have, the state is required to go through an extensive environmental hearing process, the CEQA and the all kinds of public hearings with respect to moving this process forward.
I haven't worked with the state yet on a design-build project. That this is, they haven't recognized, there hasn't been something that they have utilized before in the consent orders that I have worked on. So I can't speak to that, what they determine to be required in terms of this. In an enforcement action, there is an exemption to seeker for enforcement actions, because it's already part of a permit requirement, so it's already required by law. So it's an enforcement action, but that doesn't mean that you can't have the type of public information sessions that you want. Seeker doesn't require public information centers. It requires that you fill out forms and you submit the forms and you follow up. And whether or not anybody ever bothers to read those forms from the public is a matter of whether or not you're interested. When you hold a public information session at which you've obligated yourself to present that information, you get the information disseminated to the public.
Okay. And regardless of anything that goes forward, this project, in order to go forward, would have to come to this legislature for bonding. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Ms. Curran.
Thank you. Sorry, this is Back again. Another reason why I think it's so important to engage the communities that this is going to affect is because we are also going to be constructing from Bay Park up to Sunrise Highway, from Sunrise Highway down into Cedar Creek, and those communities will be affected as well. So the more correct information we can get out there, I think the easier that part of the project will be as well, which, you know, that's going to be the tricky part. The aqueduct or viaduct, I'm never sure which to call it, an aqueduct or a viaduct.
A pipe.
A pipe. Okay, that's easier. The pipe seems easy, actually. It's the getting it to and from the pipe that's going to be the hard part, and that's where we really need the community's support.
I think that you bring up an excellent point in the idea that we should have scheduled regular meetings, because SECR doesn't require scheduled regular meetings. It doesn't require meetings at all, and basically what it normally happens is on the eve of the decision-making process, in which things have progressed down the line a good bit, and then people don't feel like they've had an input at a time in which they could have made the decision makers and the builders aware of what they should know. So if you have a regular scheduled project meetings, and when I worked for the city at the Newtown Creek sewage treatment plant projects and other projects, we had all sorts of involvement from the communities there, and we would have regular monthly meetings at which, you know, that I would attend and other people would attend to discuss where we were going, and what needed to be known to the decision makers from the public, as well as what the public needed the decision makers needed to tell the public.
Any other questions? Hearing none. All those in favor of moving this item? Oh, I'm sorry. Public comment. Ms. Meriday. I apologize.
Good afternoon. Meet 'em every day. Okay. Where do I begin in my 3 minutes? I appreciate the comments from Legislator Curran and Legislator Rhodes. I'm trying to be bipartisan here. The public needs to be heard, particularly in the impacted communities, one in which I live in. And there is, I don't necessarily say it's misinformation, but Sunrise Highway just received a significant upgrade. So now we're going to be telling the residents that we're going to be digging up parts of that road. We don't know which parts. We don't know exactly how this pipe that's allegedly pristine, what the overall integrity of that is. We have issues already with our water, the nitrogen and the effluent aside. So there are significant concerns that we have here, and many of the residents, particularly in the Baldwin Harbor area, who are still addressing, while paying their taxes, the fact that they can't live in their homes because of what already rolled in their house, care of Superstorm Sandy. We need to know what type of assurances and safeties are going to be in place to protect us against any leaks or breaks. I don't know if anybody read about the leaks with the Keystone Pipeline. As far as having some assurances with modern technology and construction, I really don't. I really would also like to know, when we talk about work quality violations, clearly this is not something that popped up all of a sudden. So it was already there when many of our politicians were having those nice little photo ops down at Bay Park after we spent all those multi-million dollars post-Sandy. So where is the tab for that, for the work that was already done? So I'm hoping, I don't know, this is probably whistling in the wind, but it's December and I'm optimistic, that we can have more discussion, more open discussion, and since most of this is already going to pass through anyway, I would like to endeavor to request that the public get more opportunities to be heard now, as opposed to having some type of environmental catastrophe and then everyone wants to run for cover after the fact, but the residents will still be the ones who are impacted and will have to pay for the privilege of having more sewer water disrupting our aquifers and things of that nature. So I'm pretty sure, call it a guess, but I've kind of been here a few times, I kind of know how this is going to run, and then the discussion will come up in the full-fledged, and once again, the outgoing majority, which will still be the majority, they'll vote a certain way, and then the other side will vote a certain way, and once again, the taxpayers are going to go into 2018 with another project that may or may not be beneficial for them. So just give us an opportunity to ask the questions, because I was getting ready to leave, then I heard what was coming up here, and I think we could have had more public here to actually get this addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. We look forward in the future to avoiding that, to affording that opportunity to provide public input into this project. Any other public comment? Hearing none, all those in favor of moving this item, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item is reported unanimously. Seeing no other business before us, motion by Mr. Rhodes to adjourn, seconded by Mr. Gaylor. All those in favor, please say aye. We are adjourned.